You think Thanksgiving appetizers in Black households were just store-bought chips? Think again. These soul food spreads turned holiday gatherings into celebrations where children crowded the kitchen long before dinner. Here are 30 Thanksgiving appetizers kids begged for in the 1970s. Deviled eggs with paprika and pickle relish were the appetizer children fought over at every Thanksgiving gathering, their bright yellow centers dotted with red paprika creating tiny works of art. Grandmothers would boil dozens of eggs the night before, peeling them while warm and slicing lengthwise before scooping yolks into mixing bowls. The yolks were mashed with mayonnaise, yellow mustard, sweet pickle relish, and vinegar until perfectly creamy, then spooned back into egg white halves. Paprika sprinkled on top added color and smokiness. In Black households during the 1970s, deviled eggs symbolized celebration, appearing at every gathering from church dinners to reunions. Children would hover near the kitchen, waiting to sneak one before dinner, knowing that once adults arrived, these treats would disappear. The combination of creamy richness, tangy pickle brightness, and paprika's heat satisfied everyone. Fried chicken wings with hot sauce and butter created sticky, finger-licking appetizers that had children lined up before dinner was announced, their crispy exteriors giving way to tender meat falling off the bone. Families prepared massive batches on Thanksgiving morning, seasoning them with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and paprika, before dredging in flour and dropping into cast-iron skillets filled with bubbling hot oil. The wings fried until golden brown and crackling crisp, filling kitchens with aromas that drew everyone from every corner. Once drained and still hot, wings were tossed in melted butter and hot sauce, the heat always bold and spicy. In the 1970s, Black households, these wings represented abundance, showing guests everyone was welcome to eat their fill. Children loved them because they were handheld, required no utensils, and delivered maximum flavor with every bite. Cocktail sausages wrapped in flaky biscuit dough emerged from ovens as golden crescents that children grabbed from cooling racks, burning their fingers but unable to wait. Mothers would roll out refrigerated biscuit dough, cutting it into strips before wrapping each small sausage like a tiny gift and arranging them on greased baking sheets. The wrapped sausages baked until the dough turned golden brown and flaky, the fat from the sausages creating pockets of rich, meaty flavor. Some families brushed the tops with melted butter and sesame seeds before baking, adding extra richness and subtle, nutty crunch. In Black households during the 1970s, these sausage rolls appeared at every major holiday, their ease of preparation making them perfect for busy cooks managing multiple dishes. Children loved them because they were small, portable, and perfectly sized for little hands. Cheese straws made from sharp cheddar and cayenne pepper were crispy, addictive sticks that disappeared from serving bowls almost as quickly as they were refilled, their orange-gold color and spicy kick making them irresistible. Grandmothers would grate blocks of sharp cheddar by hand, mixing it with softened butter, flour, cayenne pepper, and salt until the dough came together, then pressing it through cookie presses or rolling it into long ropes before slicing. The cheese straws baked until crispy and slightly browned at the edges, filling kitchens with the sharp, tangy aroma of melting cheese mixed with subtle heat. Once cooled, they were stored in tins, maintaining crispness for days. In 1970s, Black households, cheese straws represented Southern tradition, recipes passed down through generations with each family adding their signature touch, extra cayenne, paprika, or pecans. Stuffed celery with cream cheese and pimento created colorful boats that children picked up by their crunchy handles, the creamy filling contrasting perfectly with the crisp, fresh vegetable that provided texture amidst holiday indulgence. Mothers would wash and trim celery stalks, cutting them into 3-inch lengths before drying them thoroughly and arranging them on serving platters like little canoes. The filling was made by beating cream cheese until fluffy, then folding in diced pimentos, mayonnaise, and seasonings like garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper. The cream cheese mixture was spread generously into each celery groove, mounded slightly and sometimes garnished with paprika, chopped olives, or crispy bacon. In Black households during the 1970s, stuffed celery represented an attempt to include something fresh among heavier holiday offerings. Children loved them because the cream cheese provided richness while celery added refreshing crunch. Salmon croquettes served as mini appetizers were crispy golden patties that children devoured while standing in kitchens, their hands reaching for more before finishing what they were already eating. Grandmothers would drain cans of pink salmon, carefully picking through the meat to remove bones and skin, then flaking the fish into mixing bowls where it was combined with chopped onions, bell peppers, beaten eggs, cornmeal, and seasonings. The mixture was shaped into small patties, pressed firmly to ensure they held together, then carefully lowered into hot oil where they sizzled and turned golden brown. The exterior developed a crispy crust while the interior stayed moist and flavorful. In 1970s, Black households' salmon croquettes were economical elegance, transforming canned fish into something special worthy of holiday tables. Children loved them because they were handheld, didn't require forks, and packed protein and flavor into every crispy bite. Fried okra rounds served with ranch dressing were crispy, crunchy appetizers that introduced children to vegetables in ways that made them forget they were eating something healthy, the golden coating making every bite feel like a treat. Mothers would slice fresh okra into thick rounds, coating them first in buttermilk that helped breading adhere, then dredging them in seasoned cornmeal mixed with flour, salt, pepper, and garlic powder. The okra rounds were dropped into hot oil where they bubbled and crisped, the cornmeal coating turning golden brown while the okra inside stayed tender. Once drained on paper towels and sprinkled with extra salt while still hot, the okra was piled into serving bowls and placed near small dishes of ranch dressing that children dunked them into with enthusiasm. In Black households during the 1970s, fried okra represented Southern tradition meeting holiday hospitality. Children loved fried okra because it felt like eating fried chicken in vegetable form. Sweet potato bites topped with mini marshmallows were dessert-like appetizers that blurred the line between side dish and treat, their orange flesh and white topping creating visual appeal that drew children like magnets before dinner was served. Mothers would bake sweet potatoes until soft, then scoop out the flesh and mash it with butter, brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla extract until smooth and creamy. The sweetened sweet potato mixture was spooned into mini muffin tins or shaped into small balls and placed on baking sheets, each one topped with a single mini marshmallow that would toast golden brown. As they baked, the marshmallows puffed up and turned golden, creating that characteristic toasted flavor that children associated with campfires and summer fun. In the 1970s Black households, these bites represented creativity, taking traditional candied yams and reimagining them as finger foods children could grab. Bacon-wrapped water chestnuts delivered crispy, salty, and slightly sweet bites that children fought over despite not knowing exactly what water chestnuts were, the bacon exterior and crunchy interior creating mysterious but delicious combinations. Aunties would drain cans of whole water chestnuts, wrapping each one with half a strip of bacon and securing it with toothpicks before arranging them on baking sheets. Before baking, each bundle was brushed with a mixture of brown sugar and soy sauce that caramelized during cooking, creating a sweet salty glaze that coated the bacon. The water chestnuts roasted until the bacon was crispy and rendered, the fat dripping away while the sugar coating turned golden brown and slightly sticky. In Black households during the 1970s, bacon-wrapped water chestnuts represented sophistication borrowed from magazines, recipes that seemed fancy but remained simple for home cooks. Children loved them because bacon made everything better. Pigs in blankets made with cocktail franks wrapped in crescent roll dough emerged from ovens as perfect little packages that children ate by the handful, their small size making them perfect for young appetites and hands that grabbed multiple pieces at once. Mothers would unroll refrigerated crescent dough, separating it along the perforations before cutting each triangle in half to create smaller pieces that wrapped around cocktail-sized hot dogs snugly. The wrapped franks were arranged on baking sheets with the dough seam facing down, sometimes brushed with melted butter or beaten egg for extra golden color. As they baked, the dough puffed up and turned flaky and golden, while the franks inside steamed and stayed juicy, creating combinations of textures that made every bite satisfying. In the 1970s, Black households, pigs in blankets represented quick, crowd-pleasing appetizers. Children loved them because they were perfectly sized for little hands. Miniature cornbread muffins with honey butter were golden gems that children popped into their mouths whole, the crumbly cornbread texture melting while sweet honey butter added richness. Mothers would prepare cornbread batter using stone-ground cornmeal, flour, eggs, buttermilk, and just enough sugar to balance the corn's natural earthiness, then spoon it into mini muffin tins that baked quickly. The muffins emerged from ovens with crispy, slightly caramelized tops and tender, crumbly interiors that begged to be broken open and slathered with butter. Honey butter was made by whipping softened butter with honey until fluffy and smooth, creating a spread that melted instantly when slathered on hot muffins. In the 1970s, Black households, these miniature cornbread muffins represented Southern hospitality in bite-sized form. Children loved them because they were individually portioned, making them feel like special treats rather than ordinary bread, and the sweet honey butter made every bite feel indulgent and special. Cocktail meatballs simmered in grape jelly and chili sauce created sweet, savory bites that children couldn't resist, the glossy sauce coating each meatball like candy while delivering unexpected flavors. Mothers would brown frozen meatballs in skillets before transferring them to slow cookers or pots where they simmered in a mixture of grape jelly and bottled chili sauce that melted together into a thick, shiny glaze. The combination sounded strange but tasted magical, the grape jelly's sweetness balancing the chili sauce's tang and creating a flavor profile that kept people reaching for more. As the meatballs simmered, they absorbed the sauce and became tender, the exterior developing a sticky coating that made them perfect for spearing with toothpicks. In Black households during the 1970s, these cocktail meatballs represented easy elegance, a recipe that seemed fancy but required minimal effort. Children loved them because they were bite-sized, required no cutting, and tasted like a sweet, savory treat. Cheese ball rolled in pecans sat proudly on serving platters surrounded by crackers, its cream cheese base mixed with cheddar, green onions, and seasonings before being shaped into a perfect sphere and coated with chopped pecans. Aunties would soften cream cheese and mix it with shredded sharp cheddar, finely chopped green onions, Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, and sometimes hot sauce for complexity. The mixture was then shaped into a ball or log, wrapped in plastic, and chilled until firm enough to handle. Just before serving, the cheese ball was rolled in finely chopped pecans that created a crunchy, nutty coating contrasting beautifully with the creamy interior. In 1970s Black households, cheese balls represented sophistication and effort, centerpieces of appetizer spreads that showed guests the host had put thought into the gathering. Children loved them because they could spread the cheese themselves onto crackers, feeling grown up and independent. Shrimp cocktail served in small cups with tangy cocktail sauce was elegant finger food that made children feel sophisticated, the cold, tender shrimp dipped in spicy sweet sauce creating flavors that seemed fancy. Mothers would boil shrimp in seasoned water with Old Bay seasoning, lemon, and bay leaves until they turned pink and curled, then plunge them into ice water to stop the cooking. Once chilled, the shrimp were peeled and deveined, their tails left on for easy handling, then arranged around small cups filled with cocktail sauce made from ketchup, horseradish, lemon juice, and Worcestershire sauce. The cocktail sauce had a sharp, tangy kick that balanced the shrimp's natural sweetness, creating combinations that felt restaurant quality. In the 1970s, Black households, shrimp cocktail represented luxury and celebration, an appetizer that elevated holiday gatherings. Children loved shrimp cocktail because they could hold the shrimp by the tail and dip them like French fries. Chicken salad stuffed in cherry tomatoes created colorful, bite-sized portions that children eagerly grabbed. The cool, creamy chicken salad contrasting with the fresh, slightly tart tomato cups that held everything together. Aunties would hollow out cherry tomatoes using small spoons or melon ballers, creating little edible bowls that were functional and beautiful when arranged on serving platters. The chicken salad was made from finely chopped cooked chicken mixed with mayonnaise, diced celery, sweet pickle relish, and seasonings. The mixture kept cold until serving time. Each hollowed tomato was filled with a generous spoonful of chicken salad, mounded slightly on top for visual appeal. In 1970s Black households, these stuffed tomatoes represented creativity and presentation. transforming simple ingredients into appetizers that looked impressive enough for special occasions. Children loved them because they were perfectly portioned, colorful, and combined familiar flavors in a fun format. Rumaki wrapped chicken livers and water chestnuts in bacon created sophisticated bites that curious children tried, the crispy bacon exterior making them willing to taste the unfamiliar liver that turned out mild. Aunties would cut chicken livers into bite-sized pieces, marinate them briefly in soy sauce and ginger, then wrap them with water chestnut slices in bacon before securing everything with toothpicks. The bundles were arranged on baking sheets and roasted until the bacon crisped and rendered, the fat keeping the liver moist while adding smoky saltiness that transformed the organ meat into something special. As they cooked, the soy sauce caramelized slightly, creating a sweet savory glaze that coated the bacon. In Black households during the 1970s, Rumaki represented culinary adventurousness, recipes borrowed from magazines that brought international flavors to holiday tables. Children who were brave enough to try them discovered that bacon really did make everything better. Ham biscuits made with country ham and soft dinner rolls became handheld sandwiches that children devoured, the salty ham contrasting perfectly with the sweet, buttery rolls that held everything together. Mothers would slice country ham paper thin, the intensely salty, cured meat packed with flavor that needed only small amounts to satisfy. Then tuck the slices into soft dinner rolls that had been split and buttered. Some families brushed the tops of the assembled biscuits with melted butter and baked them briefly to warm everything through and create slightly crispy tops. The combination of salty, savory ham with soft, slightly sweet rolls created perfect flavor balance that kept people coming back for more. In 1970s Black households, ham biscuits represented Southern tradition, appetizers that could be prepared ahead and served at room temperature. Children loved ham biscuits because they were familiar comfort food in easy-to-eat form, requiring no plates or utensils and perfect for grabbing. Spinach dip, served with crackers and vegetables, was creamy, savory goodness that children scooped up enthusiastically. The rich cream cheese and sour cream base mixed with chopped spinach and seasonings, creating dips that tasted indulgent. Aunties would thaw frozen chopped spinach and squeeze out all the excess water before mixing it with softened cream cheese, sour cream, mayonnaise, dried vegetable soup mix, and sometimes water chestnuts for added crunch. The mixture was stirred together until smooth and well combined, then refrigerated for several hours to allow flavors to meld and develop depth. Some families served the dip cold, while others baked it briefly to create warm, bubbling cheese pulls that made every scoop exciting. In 1970s Black households, spinach dip represented modern entertaining, recipes that came from package instructions but became beloved traditions. Children loved spinach dip because the vegetables were hidden in creamy richness, making them willing to eat greens. Crab cakes formed into mini patties were seafood luxury that made Thanksgiving feel extra special. The sweet crab meat mixed with breadcrumbs and seasonings before being pan-fried until golden. Grandmothers would pick through cans of crab meat to remove any shell pieces, then gently fold the delicate meat with beaten eggs, breadcrumbs, mayonnaise, mustard, Old Bay seasoning, and sometimes diced bell peppers. The mixture was formed into small patties, each one handled carefully, then refrigerated briefly to help them hold together during cooking. The crab cakes were pan-fried in butter until golden brown on both sides, the exterior developing a crispy crust while the interior stayed moist and packed with sweet crab flavor. In the 1970s, Black households, crab cakes represented coastal sophistication, bringing seafood traditions to holiday tables and elevating the appetizer spread. Children loved mini crab cakes because they felt fancy, tasted sweet rather than fishy, and came in sizes perfect for young appetites. Pickled shrimp marinated in vinegar, oil, and spices created tangy, flavorful bites that adventurous children tried. The cold, tender shrimp infused with herbs and aromatics that made them taste complex. Aunties would boil shrimp until just cooked, then peel them and place them in jars or bowls where they were covered with a marinade of vinegar, oil, sliced onions, bay leaves, peppercorns, and sometimes lemon slices. The shrimp marinated for at least 24 hours, absorbing the tangy, aromatic flavors and developing a pickled taste that was both refreshing and sophisticated. The marinated shrimp were served cold with toothpicks for easy serving, the onions and bay leaves removed or left in depending on family preference. In Black households during the 1970s, pickled shrimp represented make-ahead convenience, appetizers that actually improved with time. Children who tried pickled shrimp discovered seafood could be tangy and bright. Pimento cheese pinwheels made with tortillas spread with creamy pimento cheese and rolled into tight spirals created colorful, easy-to-eat bites that children grabbed enthusiastically. Aunties would spread flour tortillas with homemade pimento cheese made from sharp cheddar, cream cheese, diced pimentos, mayonnaise, and seasonings. The tortillas were then rolled tightly into logs, wrapped in plastic wrap, and refrigerated for several hours to firm up and make slicing easier. Once chilled, the logs were unwrapped and sliced into rounds about half an inch thick, each pinwheel revealing the bright orange cheese dotted with red pimento pieces. In 1970s, Black households, pimento cheese pinwheels represented modern entertaining, a variation on traditional pimento cheese that made serving easier and more elegant. Children loved pimento cheese pinwheels because they were perfectly portioned, colorful, and tasted like their favorite spread in a fun new format. Asparagus wrapped in ham created elegant finger food that introduced children to vegetables they might not try otherwise, the salty ham making the asparagus taste less intimidating. Mothers would blanch fresh asparagus spears briefly in boiling water until they turned bright green and became slightly tender, then plunge them into ice water. Each asparagus spear was then wrapped with a thin slice of deli ham, sometimes spread with cream cheese or mustard first for extra flavor. The wrapped spears were arranged on serving platters, sometimes secured with toothpicks if the ham wouldn't stay wrapped. In Black households during the 1970s, asparagus wrapped in ham represented sophistication borrowed from magazine recipes, appetizers that looked impressive enough for special occasions. Children loved them because the ham provided familiar salty flavor, while the asparagus added crunch and color, making vegetables feel like treats rather than obligations. Smoked oysters on crackers with hot sauce were adventurous bites that curious children tried, the smoky, briny oysters creating complex flavors that divided people into lovers and haters with no middle ground. Fathers would open tins of smoked oysters packed in oil, arranging them on serving platters surrounded by crackers and providing small bottles of hot sauce for those who wanted extra heat. The oysters had a strong, distinctive flavor, smoky from the curing process and intensely oceanic. Each oyster was placed on a cracker, sometimes with a tiny drop of hot sauce, creating bite-sized portions that delivered maximum flavor. In 1970s, Black households smoked oysters represented coastal sophistication and culinary bravery, appetizers that showed guests the host was willing to serve bold, distinctive foods. Children who tried smoked oysters either loved them immediately or swore them off forever, the strong flavor creating lasting memories. Sausage balls made with breakfast sausage, cheese, and biscuit mix, baked into savory spheres that children popped into their mouths like candy, their crispy exteriors giving way to soft, cheesy, slightly spicy interiors. Mothers would combine raw breakfast sausage with shredded sharp cheddar cheese and dry biscuit mix, kneading everything together until well combined. The mixture was then rolled into balls about an inch in diameter, arranged on baking sheets with space between them, and baked until golden brown. As they baked, the fat from the sausage rendered while the cheese melted, creating savory, flavorful bites that were crispy outside and tender inside. In the 1970s, Black households, sausage balls represented easy entertaining, a recipe that could be made ahead. Children loved sausage balls because they were perfectly portioned, required no utensils, and delivered breakfast flavors in snackable form. Cheese wafers made with sharp cheddar and butter created crispy, salty crackers that children munched by the handful, their homemade quality far superior to anything store-bought could offer. Grandmothers would cream softened butter with finely shredded sharp cheddar cheese, then gradually add flour, salt, and cayenne pepper until the mixture formed a stiff dough. The dough was rolled into logs, wrapped in wax paper, and chilled until firm, then sliced into thin rounds and baked until golden brown and crispy. As they baked, the cheese melted into the butter and flour, creating crackers that were rich, savory, and addictively crunchy with just a hint of heat from the cayenne. In 1970s, Black households, cheese wafers represented Southern tradition and hospitality, recipes that had been passed down through generations. Children loved cheese wafers because they tasted like cheesy potato chips but felt more sophisticated since they were homemade. Cream cheese and olive pinwheels, made with softened cream cheese mixed with chopped green olives and rolled in tortillas, created tangy, savory bites. Children found intriguing. Aunties would soften cream cheese and mix it with finely chopped green olives, pimentos, and sometimes a touch of garlic powder, spreading the mixture evenly on flour tortillas. The tortillas were rolled tightly, wrapped in plastic, and refrigerated for hours to firm up before being sliced into colorful pinwheels. Each slice revealed swirls of white cream cheese dotted with green olive pieces, creating visual appeal that drew children's attention. In 1970s, Black households, these pinwheels represented creative entertaining, showing how simple ingredients could become elegant appetizers. Children loved them because they were fun to look at, easy to eat, and introduced them to olives in a creamy format that made the vegetables more approachable and less intimidating than eating them whole. Butter beans cooked with ham hock and served in small cups became hearty appetizers that filled hungry children before dinner, their creamy texture and smoky flavor creating comfort in every spoonful. Grandmothers would simmer dried butter beans with ham hocks, onions, and seasonings for hours until the beans became tender and creamy while absorbing the smoky, salty flavor from the meat. The finished beans were served in small portions in cups or bowls with small spoons, allowing guests to enjoy them without needing plates. Some families topped the beans with crumbled cornbread or a drizzle of hot sauce for extra flavor and texture. In Black households during the 1970s, butter beans represented soul food tradition brought to the appetizer table, showing that holiday food could honor heritage while fitting modern entertaining formats. Children loved butter beans because they tasted familiar and comforting, like Thanksgiving dinner in miniature form that warmed them from the inside. Fried green tomato slices served with remoulade sauce were crispy, tangy bites that introduced children to Southern traditions, the cornmeal coating providing crunch while the tart tomato inside stayed firm and flavorful. Mothers would slice green tomatoes thick, dredge them in seasoned cornmeal mixed with flour and spices, then fry them in hot oil until golden brown and crispy. The remoulade sauce was made from mayonnaise, mustard, pickles, capers, and spices, creating a tangy, creamy dip that complemented the fried tomatoes perfectly. Each slice was served hot with a small dish of sauce for dipping, the combination of temperatures and textures making every bite interesting. In 1970s, Black households, fried green tomatoes represented end-of-season resourcefulness, using tomatoes that wouldn't ripen before frost to create something delicious. Children loved fried green tomatoes because they were crispy like French fries but tasted tangy and different, expanding their understanding of what vegetables could be. Chicken liver pate spread on crackers created rich, smooth bites that adventurous children tried, the creamy texture and distinctive flavor introducing them to foods that felt grown-up and sophisticated. Aunties would sauté chicken livers with onions and butter until cooked through but still slightly pink inside, then blend them with cream cheese, spices, and sometimes brandy or sherry until smooth. The pate was chilled in molds or ramekins, then unmolded onto serving platters surrounded by crackers and garnished with chopped parsley or capers. The texture was silky smooth while the flavor was rich and slightly metallic in that characteristic liver way that some loved and others found challenging. In Black households during the 1970s, chicken liver pate represented culinary sophistication, recipes borrowed from French cuisine and adapted to Southern ingredients. Children who tried it felt brave and grown up, stepping outside their comfort zones to taste foods their parents enjoyed at special gatherings. Macaroni salad with diced vegetables served in small cups was creamy comfort food that children recognized and loved. The familiar pasta combined with mayonnaise, pickles, and vegetables creating flavors that felt like home. Mothers would cook elbow macaroni until tender, drain it, and rinse with cold water before mixing it with mayonnaise, diced celery, chopped pickles, diced bell peppers, hard-boiled eggs, and seasonings. The salad was chilled for several hours, then served in small portions with spoons. Some families added mustard for tang, others included diced pimentos for color, each version reflecting family preferences. In the 1970s Black households, macaroni salad represented familiar comfort brought to the appetizer table, showing that holiday food didn't always need to be fancy. Children loved macaroni salad because it tasted familiar and satisfying, like picnic food that reminded them of summer even during cold November. Pecan pie was the Southern reunion classic that tasted like sweetness, crunch, and memory baked into a golden brown slice that reflected the trees and fields many families grew up around. Grandmothers gathered pecans from the yard or accepted bags from neighbors who shared what their own trees had dropped, washing and sorting the nuts before stirring them into the glossy filling of sugar, eggs, butter, and syrup that came together like a thick, shining caramel. As the pie baked, the top formed a crackled layer of toasted pecans, while the inside stayed soft, sweet, and gooey, creating the perfect contrast when cut into warm slices. Served at reunions, pecan pie reminded everyone of fall harvests, winter holidays, and afternoons spent cracking shells on front porches while stories filled the air. It was rich but never overwhelming, and even a thin slice felt decadent and comforting. Families carried it to gatherings wrapped in foil or cloth and placed it proudly among the other desserts, knowing it would vanish quickly once plates were passed. Pecan pie carried history, flavor, and the strength of generations who knew how to make something precious from simple ingredients. Grease gravy rice was what people cooked when they refused to let anything go to waste. When breakfast meats were done frying, the leftover grease became treasure. A spoon of flour went in first, sizzling and popping until it turned golden. Then milk or water got poured in, slow and steady, until it thickened into smooth gravy. That hot gravy poured over white rice made something out of nearly nothing. It was salty, creamy, and smoky all at once. The smell filled the house, and the taste filled the stomach. Parents called it breakfast, but it could carry a family through an entire day. It came from kitchens that knew survival like a second language, where flavor was earned from thrift and patience. Kids grew up thinking it was comfort food, not knowing it was born from rationing and struggle. Grease gravy rice was more than a recipe. It was a declaration that no meal was too small to matter. Every bite was a promise that the family would eat, even when times were lean. It was humble food that carried pride on a spoon. Deep dish peach cobbler was the kind of dessert that made holidays feel complete even when money was tight and groceries needed stretching. Those peaches, sometimes fresh and sometimes from a can, simmered down in sugar and warm spices until the whole pot smelled like sunshine. That refused to leave, Grandma would pour them into a deep dish that had seen more holidays than half the folks sitting at the table, letting the syrup spread and bubble like it had something to say. Her crust was never perfect in shape, but it was perfect in spirit. Thick, golden, and made by hand, pressed together with fingers that knew exactly how to make something tender without being taught. When that cobbler baked, the house felt fuller, warmer, kinder. It was the dessert she brought out after church gatherings, family reunions, and long afternoons where everyone talked loud and laughed louder. The first spoonful always broke through the crust with that soft crackle that made people sit still for a second. Underneath was the peach, filling so rich and syrupy it tasted like home no matter where you were. Holidays in African American families were never just about the fancy dishes. They were about what held people together. Peach cobbler was one of those things not written down, not measured, just understood. It was made with patience, muscle memory, and the unspoken promise that joy would always make a way. Peanut soup had deep roots in West African cooking and carried over into the kitchens of Black America during times of scarcity. Families would boil peanuts until soft, grind them into a paste, and whisk them into broth with onions and seasonings. The result was a creamy, nutty soup that filled stomachs without relying on expensive meat. Because peanuts were widely available and inexpensive, This dish became a dependable source of protein and comfort. It could be served plain with bread or thickened with vegetables to stretch even further. Children grew up tasting peanut soup as a warm, sustaining dish that soothed hunger while carrying the echo of older traditions. The flavor was earthy and satisfying, reminding families of both resilience and cultural roots. Peanut soup showed that the most affordable ingredients could still produce something memorable, sustaining entire households during difficult seasons. It was not just soup, it was survival food with heritage poured into every bowl. Peach cobbler was the bubbling reunion dessert that pulled people toward the kitchen long before the pan ever hit the table, filling the air with the smell of peaches, sugar, and warm spices. Whether made from fresh peaches in the summer or canned peaches during the rest of the year, the filling cooked down into a thick, golden mixture that tasted like sunshine and memory. The crust varied from family to family, sometimes a lattice, sometimes a full sheet of dough, sometimes spooned on like dumplings, but always baked until brown, crisp, and irresistible. When the cobbler came out of the oven, the juices bubbled around the edges, and the scent wrapped itself around the entire gathering, making people line up with bowls in hand. Served warm with melting ice cream, or on its own, it tasted like the heart of southern Sundays and long afternoons, spent talking, laughing, and passing plates across crowded tables. Peach cobbler was more than dessert. It was a tradition carried proudly by the cooks who prepared it year after year. Pound cake made in heavy bundt pans was the blueprint dessert that every grandmother had her own version of, and she would defend that version like it was family law. Thick, dense, buttery, and reliable, pound cake sat on every holiday table, whether it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, or a Sunday gathering that ran long. The bundt pan itself carried history, scratched and seasoned from years of baking. Grandma creamed the butter and sugar until her arm ached, then added eggs one by one like steps in a ritual. The batter was always heavy, and so was the responsibility of not wasting a drop. When the cake baked, it rose slow and steady, filling the house with a smell that made kids wander into the kitchen like sleepwalkers. Pound cake sliced clean, held its shape, and paired with anything, ice cream, fruit, or just a quiet moment alone. It was the dessert that reminded families that sometimes the simplest things lasted the longest. Okra fritters with corn silk were the kind of kitchen magic that only came from necessity and imagination. In the long summer months, when the fields were full and money was not, people used every part of what they harvested. The corn silk that clung to the ears was not thrown away, but saved and shredded, added into batter alongside chopped okra, flour, and a splash of milk or water. When dropped into hot oil, the fritters puffed and crackled, their edges turning golden and crisp. The smell was something you could follow from down the road. Warm, nutty, and sweet with that faint scent of corn. Each bite was crunchy on the outside and tender in the middle, with little strings of corn silk that gave it texture and charm. They were served with syrup or vinegar, depending on what the family had, eaten right out of the pan when patience ran out. Okra fritters with corn silk were food born from care and cleverness, proof that waste had no place in a humble kitchen. Every family had its own version, passed quietly between generations, carrying the taste of late afternoons, hard work, and simple joy. They were poverty's poetry, fried into something worth remembering. Field green salad was a dish born from foraging, when store-bought vegetables were not available or were too costly. Families would gather wild greens like dandelion, mustard, or pokeweed, clean them carefully, and toss them with vinegar or oil. These greens were bitter, but they were free, nutritious, and available almost everywhere. Field green salad offered vitamins and freshness that was often missing from wartime or depression diets, balancing the heavy starches and salted meats that dominated many meals. For children, it was sometimes an acquired taste, but adults appreciated the practicality of gathering what nature provided. Foraging for greens tied families directly to the land and created a sense of connection to survival practices passed down through generations. Field green salad reflected both hardship and resilience, reminding families that the earth itself could provide when markets could not. It was simple, frugal, and a reminder of the strength that came from resourcefulness. Caramel cake was the kind of reunion dessert that revealed who in the family had the patience and skill to stand over a hot stove, stirring icing long enough to make it perfect. The cake layers themselves were simple, tender and pale, but the icing was where the magic lived, thick, sweet, and slow cooked, until it deepened into a golden brown that tasted like butter warmth and memory. Grandmothers guarded their caramel icing method with pride because it took steady hands and a calm heart to keep the sugar from scorching as it bubbled and darkened in the pot. Once ready, the icing was poured over the stacked layers while still warm, spreading into silky drapes that coated every inch before cooling into a soft caramel shell. At reunions, the caramel cake always looked humble on the outside, but the moment it was sliced, people hurried forward for a piece because they knew the flavor inside carried generations of practice. The icing melted on the tongue with a sweetness that felt deep and comforting, and the cake beneath was tender enough to soak up every drop. Caramel cake tasted like real labor poured into something meant to be shared and celebrated. It reminded everyone that the best desserts came from time, attention, and love stirred slowly over a warm stove. Red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting was the kind of celebratory dessert that appeared on Christmas tables like royalty making a grand entrance. Its deep red color was dramatic, bold, and instantly recognizable. Grandma mixed the batter with a focus usually reserved for important tasks. The cocoa powder gave it depth, the vinegar made it tender, and the thick cream cheese frosting tied everything together in a tangy sweetness that felt like a hug. In African American homes, red velvet was not just a cake, it was a statement. It meant company was coming. It meant something special was happening. It meant the year had been long, but joy still had a seat at the table. Cowpea soup simmered like a prayer whispered over a fire. The pot would start with water, a scoop of dried field peas, and maybe a scrap of salted meat if the week had been kind. Onions and garlic joined in, releasing their scent as the broth thickened into something golden and strong. The cowpeas, small and sturdy, softened slowly, their flavor deepening with every hour. This wasn't fast food, it was patient food, built on rhythm and time. Families made it during harvest, when work was hard and hands needed warmth. It was ladled into tin bowls and passed around without ceremony, each bite grounding you in gratitude. Sometimes cornbread floated on top like an offering, soaking up the last drops of broth. The soup tasted of earth and labor, of simple things done well. Cowpea soup was both meal and memory, tying together generations who had learned how to make plenty out of little. It was food for body and spirit alike, humble but whole, strong but sugar cane sticks were the simplest kind of sweetness, and they carried a special memory for children who grew up with little. Fresh cane was cut into sticks, peeled and chewed for its sweet juice, offering a natural candy when refined sugar or store-bought treats were out of reach. For many children in the South, walking home with a stick of sugar cane was as good as holding a chocolate bar. It was affordable, long-lasting, and carried the earthy, raw sweetness of the land itself. Parents loved it because it kept children happy without costing much, and it taught the value of finding joy in small things. Sugar cane sticks carried the reminder that sweetness did not need to come from a store, but from fields worked by hand. They were part of the rhythm of rural life, tied to harvests and family memories. Even in the toughest years, sugar cane sticks brought happiness. 7-Up cake was the bright citrus-soaked reunion classic that brought a cheerful spark to every dessert table thanks to its airy texture and lemon-lime sweetness. The batter mixed into a pale, silky pour that gained its lift from the soda folded carefully inside a trick that made the cake light, tender, and bursting with flavor. As it baked, the kitchen filled with a fresh citrus scent that felt like summer even on cloudy days, and children hovered near the oven, hoping the timer would ring early. When the cake cooled, it revealed soft golden curves shaped by the bundt pan, making it one of the most eye-catching desserts at any family gathering. A warm sugar glaze was poured over the top, soaking into every ridge and giving each bite a sweet, bright finish. Families looked for it at every reunion because it tasted like celebration without costing much to make. Each slice carried the memory of afternoons spent laughing outdoors and long tables full of food that brought people together year after year. Hominy crackle porridge was the kind of breakfast that came from patience, not plenty. When there was no bacon, no biscuits, and not much else in the pantry, leftover hominy saved the day. It was stirred into a pot with water or milk, sweetened with molasses, and spiced with nutmeg or cinnamon if you had it. The sound of the spoon scraping against the pot made a rhythm that felt almost like music, slow and steady like morning itself. When the porridge bubbled, it released a scent both earthy and rich, a blend of smoke, sugar, and warmth. Children would sit waiting with chipped bowls in their hands, ready for the first ladle. It was thick and creamy, sometimes with a thin golden crust if it sat long enough. Hominy crackle porridge filled bellies and lifted moods, turning scraps into something special. It reminded families that sweetness did not depend on sugar alone, but on love and endurance. Every spoonful was a story of thrift and tenderness, made from what was left and shared without complaint. When the bowl was empty, people still felt full, not just from the food, but from the comfort it brought to a hard world made softer by care. Which soul food, Thanksgiving appetizer, would you bring back? Drop your memory in the comments. Hit like if these made you hungry, and subscribe so we can keep serving up forgotten flavors and traditions together.